Hello, everyone. So it's time for the lecture. My name is Shaolei, as it shows on the PowerPoint. I'm the professor from School of Architecture, and also I'm the executive dean of Institute for Accessibility Development, Tsinghua University. Today, it's my pleasure to share the knowledge about Paralympics and social inclusion with all of you. But you know, I have a heel pain, so today I cannot walk up and down. I have to sit here. So I'm a little less able person to share the knowledge of the Paralympics with you. So when we talk about this topic, it's really a quite broad topic. Say there are covers a lot of issues in it. The Paralympic Games are almost like a mirror. Its development can reflect the evolution of many issues, such as politics, rehabilitation, culture, sports, disability, and so on. So I'm going to start the presentation with several video clips because, you know, I think maybe this is the best way for all of us to understand the key words of Paralympic and disability issues in an intensive and a vivid way in just a couple of minutes, okay? So the following videos are from the IPC website. So as a kind of introduction, I just show you some clips. So if you want to watch the complete content, so just go to the official website of IPC, International Paralympic Committee, to find some rich and condensed information. It will be very helpful for all of you to understand the Paralympic. Okay, so the two video clips first. Just some clips.
We had our first competition between paralyzed ex-servicemen, 16 only, on the 29th of July, 1948.
Wheelchair athletes. Okay, but the idea was developed to the first Paralympic Games in Rome in 1960. Okay, that's two. Okay. So until nowadays, the Paralympics have become one of the most popular games in the world. Okay, the second one. It's a story about the hospital, the Stoke Mandeville Hospital, and the very important person is a good man. It's very easy to remember the name. The good man is a good man, yeah? Okay, so let's watch.
In 1944, a Jewish doctor who was a refugee from Nazi Germany started a new spinal injuries unit at Stoke Mandeville Hospital. At the time, patients were only expected to live for 2 years, so the idea was to make their remaining days as comfortable as possible. Ludwig Gutmann had other ideas about their life expectancy and insisted on managing treatment his way. His approach was controversial to many, but Gutmann single-handedly revolutionized the care of the paralyzed. He got patients off sedation and turned in bed every 2 hours to prevent infections. Next, he insisted they got up and moved around by taking part in craft and sporting activities. One of Gutmann's most inspired ideas was to get wheelchair patients playing competitive sport as a way of improving fitness, boosting self-esteem and restoring personal dignity.
It changed my world out of all recognition, because it gave me so much more confidence. I knew that I was unequal to anybody. I don't know where I would have been without him.
On the same day as the opening of the 1948 London Olympic Games, Dr. Gutmann organised a team from the Star and Garter home to compete in an archery demonstration, and it had a lasting impact.
So go to the website and find more. So let's take a brief look at the history of disabled sports and Paralympics. So as many studies have reviewed, organized sports for disabled persons began to emerge after the Industrial Revolution. So that is, say, prior to the birth of modern Paralympic Games. So why? Because the reason is different. The first reason is before the welfare state, disabled people received little support and relied on their own efforts and charitable support to survive. So many of them formed their own organizations, and not only to represent their interests, but also to offer forum for socializing. So these organizations, they provide or they organize some sports game for these people. For example, in France, the Deaf-Mute Committee was the vanguard of the international Deaf-Mute movement, which established the Deaf Games in 1924. Another reason is the modern medicine development, which promoted the development of rehabilitation. So some doctors, like Gutmann, the very famous doctor, explored the ways to promote the rehabilitation of the disabled through physical exercise or sports. Of course, in addition to these two reasons, the more important social context is what? Is the war. Yeah, especially the problem of disabled veterans. Veterans, do you know? Yeah, it's a serviceman in war, in the army, or discharged. The soldiers discharged from the army. They come back disabled. Yeah, this is caused by for example, the First and the Second World War. So, for example, during the First World War, volleyball was introduced in the UK for persons with amputations. Yeah, and non-competitive swimming was used as a means of rehabilitation. So this picture shows the bowling competition for wheelchair users, in 1923. So the real landmark of the Paralympic began with Sir Ludwig Gutmann, because in 1944, that is 4 years before this, 1948, the British government decided to open a spinal injury center, spinal injury center at the Stoke Mandeville Hospital, Stoke Mandeville Hospital. And the Gutmann was just the director of the center. So he first introduced some competitive sports like rope climbing, wheelchair polo, as one part of rehabilitation of the disabled veterans. So as the video showed just now, he organized the first Stoke Mandeville game for the paralyzed in 1949. But at that time, only 16 British veterans take part in, including 3 women. So this picture shows the first archery competition between the 2 teams, also organized by Gutmann to coincide with the 1948 London Olympics. So in the early times, wheelchair sports expanded beyond wheelchair archery to include what? Include bowling, include table tennis, and something else. So, but later, in 1960s, the first international sports organization for disabled are established. Do you know the reason? Because at that time, international sports competitions were expanded to include individuals with disabilities. But these disabled persons are not eligible for the Mandeville game. Not everyone can take part in the Mandeville game. So this organization, named International Sport Organization for Disabled, ISOD, was established, intended to play the role as a kind of entity, parallel in structures and functions to International Olympic Committee. So later on, some other important organizations are involved. And finally, almost near 30 years later, in 1989, the International Paralympic Committee was born in Germany. That's not far away. Huh? Okay, so, and also, you know, with the development of the Paralympic Games, the first Paralympic Winter Games took place in Sweden in 1976. So this chart shows the chronology of the Paralympic Games. Look, it's the first Paralympic Games in Rome in Italy, 1960. Most of the athletes are spinal cord injury. And later on, we saw the first winter. So yeah, it's marked with W. The first Winter Paralympic Games in Sweden in 1976. And later on, more and more disabled persons are involved in the games. For example, from 1990s, all the physical and the visual impairments athletes could take part in the game. And you know, the latest one should be Tokyo, the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic. And the Winter Paralympic is in South Korea in 2018. And the next year could be the 13th, the Beijing 13th Paralympic Winter Games. Yeah, it's scheduled next year from the 4th to 13th March 2022. Beijing thus will be the first city to host both the Summer and Winter Paralympics. These games will be the first Winter Paralympics held in China, and China become the third country in Asia to host Winter Paralympics after Japan and South Korea. So that's a very short history. Let's stop here for the history overview. When we talk about Paralympics, we cannot avoid talking about the issue of disability or disabled person, yeah? So what is disabled? What is disability? What is impairment? And what is handicapped? And what is crippled? And what is able? I told you I'm less able today because my heel pain. I cannot stand here for a very long time and walk up and down. So I'm a little less able. So what does it mean? What's the relationship among these concepts? So we have to, I will show you another 2 video clips. Very, very interesting because one is the video trailers for the Paralympic in Rio, Brazil in 2016. And one is a British TV station for the 2020 Tokyo Paralympic. They are talking about the same theme, but different opinion. What opinion? I think most of you heard about this in the first class. Professor Zhang Li told you about this superman. Yeah, this is the theme about Superman, so watch.
Yes, I can. Suddenly, yes, I can. Gee, I'm afraid to go on has turned into yes, I can. Take a look, what do you see? 133 pounds of confidence in me. Got the feeling I can do anything. Yes, I can. Something that sings in my blood is telling me, yes, I can. I was just born today. I can go all the way, yes. I can.
Everything the best, yeah? Everything the best. Sliding hard. Try it, yeah? Okay, last one. Look, we have a situation all the time. We have to give up. Finally. Wow. Superhuman and human. So, yeah, please, of course, we do not have enough time for discussion. The title is Superhuman or Clark Kent. Because Clark Kent is still copyrighted, so I cannot put a portrait on it. I just put a name. You know, sometimes he's Superman, sometimes he's just a journalist, Clark Kent. So if the Paralympics is about Superman and Superwomen, does that mean that the rest of us in the disabled community are merely Clark Kent? What's your opinion? We're heroes, but we're not heroes. I think the second clip tried to show this. We are not heroes. We cannot be treated as heroes in our daily lives. In fact, most of us, a lot of disabled persons, they may feel excluded from sport, from daily activities, facing barriers as a negative attitude. Say no, or inaccessible, for example, the staircase here. Inaccessible venues, and sometimes a lack of trained staff to provide or support some special needs. So, in one study of the founder of the Center for Disability Studies, Professor Colin Barr, he talks about, say, the disabled person as a super critical. The disabled person is assigned Superman abilities, almost magical. But this approach conveniently excludes the central point of the disability. What? It's the social issue. which cannot be addressed just by misplayed sentimentality of individual impairments. So from this story, I will show you another example, extend the discussion a little. These two logos. The logos may be very familiar to everyone. Yeah, it's accessible international. The right one, yes. The right one is a region international symbol of access. Yeah, no, it's very simple, very clear, and I think even little kids can easily understand the meaning of this logo. Yeah, but if we look at the picture on the left, on my left, so on a glass sliding door of Marshalls, they use a different logo, which are kind of a graphic design with obvious movement. Yeah, please note the motion lines which are used to address the movement. So if the first one is a classic, very historical, very well known, but why they try to change it? So would you please give me the answer in your heart, in your mind, why they try to change it? So this story is about another project I introduced to you. The project is by Sarah in 2010. The name is an icon is a verb. So Sarah raised the question, how do accessible cities thrive or be prosperous? And how would you edit an existing city to make it more inclusive? So the project began trying to altering public signs, which marking wheelchair accessible parking, the blue and white icons. Look at the stickers. Yeah, they tried to applying the stickers all around Boston as a kind of street art campaign. The project in this way tried to make this icon action to be a kind of occasion for asking questions about disability and the built environment, say in the very largest sense. Who has access physically, but moreover to education, to meaningful citizenship, to their rights? So frame this work as a kind of a street art campaign, allow it to live as a kind of question, rather than a resolved proposition. Yes, at least in the beginning. Yeah, this is a Sarah's project. Yeah, it does work, because in 2014, August 1st, New York government, Andrew Cuomo signed a bill last 1 week that both removed the word handicapped from the signs for people with disabilities and update the standard wheelchair symbol with a more active accessibility logo. But I still have a question to you. Anyone disagree with this? Or which is better? Left one or right one? In your opinion? Well, do you think, is everyone in the world, they agree with the second one to change the logo? For the people with vision impairment, they have no feeling about the icon. It doesn't matter. So the symbol cannot represent my feeling or my demands. So they're still arguing about which symbol is better. Yeah. But you know the project, the meaning of the project is very clear, that to make it more active, to make an ongoing question to talking about disability and their right. Okay. And we come to the fourth story. In fact, the protection of the rights has never been easily. I'll give you another example of story. This is a cover, a hardcover of a book. The picture book is just for 0 to 4 years old, little kids. So even the little kids can understand the theme of the picture book. The title is All the Way to the Top. how when girls fight for Americans with disabilities changed everything. So it's a really good story. It's a true story. And also I think it's inspirational for adults, because look, if we do not have time to review the whole historical phase, but in 1990, on March the 13th, there's a very big event, very important event in the disability, the history of disability in the United States. That is, some people, they gathered in front of the Congress Hill to demand to pass the Americans with Disability Act, what we call ADA. So when they go there, about 60 person, they cast aside their wheelchair and other mobility assistant aids to just crawl up the steps of the Capitol Hill. And the little girl was one of them. So that's why the story is so important. Just for a little girl and climb the steps. For what? For a physical demonstration of how inaccessible architecture impacts people with disabilities. So it's very important. And also, it's highlighted the urgent behind the need to pass the ADA. So on that day, the president finally signed into law. Yeah, that's how ADA came into being. So the story is interesting. Yeah? So we talk about how to understand disabilities and the different vision or different perspectives of disabilities. So how to make it barrier-free? Do you know the most difficult problems? That is, everyone is different. Yeah, there are many different kinds of barriers or obstacles. So any one of us, anyone, I think everyone, we will meet a kind of less abled status. For example, different stage of life, infants and elderly, as well as effects of injury for me. Or another, nearsightedness. Everyone who wear glasses. So how many of you wearing glasses can really cannot rely on the glasses? So that's all of this situation we call kind of disorder. So this chart visually illustrate the different types of disorders. Each column, the 3 columns, represents the temporal impact. One is permanent, temporary, situational. And each row represents the type of barrier or obstacle or problem to touch. So if you lose one arm, that's permanent. But if you meet an arm injury, so it's a temporary. And if you have to take a baby as a new parent, so it's a situational. But for all of you, you cannot use your arm to do something to operate. And to see, if you're blind, I mean maybe total blindness, or have some light feelings, or color blindness, they may be permanent. But if there is a disease, for example, cataract, that means the lens of eyes are opaque. There's something wrong with the lens of eyes. So that's a temporary. Most of the situation happens in elderly. And if you are a distracted driver, for example, looking at my mobile phone when I'm driving, so it's wrong, yeah. But it's a situational, yeah. To hear, so someone is deaf, after born, deaf. But if you have an ear infection, you cannot, hear very clearly. But if you are in a nightclub, in a bar, or even in a air terminal, it could be very noisy. We say it's a situational, yeah. You cannot hear very clearly. And to speak, some children, they are nonverbal. We say, for example, autism, 孤独症, autism, most of the autism, they're nonverbal. They do not speak. Yeah, this is the permanent. But for teachers, for me, for example, yeah, I have a laryngitis, means 喉炎, 对吧? 咽喉炎. So yeah, that's temporary, but I think maybe it could be permanent because I have to talk every day. But for heavy accent, come from Wenzhou, Cantonese, so it's also situational. So all of the situations, they are different kinds of barriers. So what of the relationship between the barriers and the environment? So I think this cartoon clearly reveals the truth that if we can change perspective of some problems, we will come to different conclusions. Look, there are several people, some small kids, and people in a wheelchair try to, waiting to get up the steps. And there's a man on the steps. He's trying to clear the snows on the steps. So the problem is, where do you sweep first? Because this man in the wheelchair said, could you please shovel the ramp? And he answered, all these other kids, kids first, yeah? All these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you. And the people answered, but if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in. That means clearing a ramp, a path for people with special needs, clears the path for everyone. So that is to say, maybe there's one solution to everyone's needs. We call it kind of a universal design. Broadly, universal design, what does it mean? It means the products which a designer's design are universally accommodating. They're catered conveniently for all their users. Is it possible? Could you find a product fit everyone's needs? No. Someone say, oh, no. Oh. Yes. What I say yes means the methodology, maybe yes. I always have the concept, have the idea, try to design something to fit all. But it's always ongoing process. That is the route towards this goal. Is a product was initially designed primarily for the mass market of normal able-bodied people. Yep. And then have been subsequently been refined and modified to suit all its other potential users as well, including people with disabilities. So that's the concept, and I think it's a common sense all over the world, yeah, about universal design, UD. So this picture, this picture, the universal design pyramid, shows the methodology of universal design. Look, it has 8 levels for the pyramid. And the first level are very active people. Yeah, those look who can jump, who can run, who can leap up stairs, who can climb the ladders, who can carry very heavy things. They're the first row. And the second level are, of course, they're generally normal adult. Look at, they wear suits like me. They're white-collar workers, able-bodied people, and not so athletic, but they can walk everywhere as they wish. So the first row and the second row, we call, they are both of them. They are able-bodied people. So as the pointer A shows, for the 2 level, it could be very easy to solve the problems. Yeah, but you should mention, in the 2 level, there are no kids. So the kids are in 3rd levels. What's the difference between the 3rd level and the 2nd level? Yeah, you have to look at it very carefully. because in the third level, they're mainly about women and kids. So the problem could be easily ignored when in the public realm. For example, I think everyone knows the public toilets. So the users of public buildings attempt to use the public toilets are regularly subject to a kind of architectural discrimination. Why? Because the number of the WCs provided is different. Maybe for women, it's less than half the number of the urinals, the WCs, the men are given. So I see something very easily to ignore. Okay, but actually from the third level to the fourth level, the situation changed, because obviously in the fourth level, most of them are elder people. Perhaps they can going around with a walking stick, so they are not disabled, but they need some confidence. I mean, some design to make it more confident. And also, we notice that there are men or women with pushchairs with infants in it. So these people sometimes are also architecturally disabled when looking to use some kind of public facilities. For example, the nursing room, the lack of the spaces in WC in toilets, compartments for adults and for the infants. And in the fifth level, the situation is quite different. These are people who has disabilities. Look at this. Just the one leg. But broadly, the 3, 4, 5 rows, sometimes if you are in a normal provision, they will not be easily architecturally disabled because there are regulations. If you can do the design according to some regulation, so they could not be ignored, but often are not. So that's why the point B, after the third level, become a kind of zigzag things, not so steady. Yes, and to the sixth level, they are independent wheelchair users. The common regulation always focus on making special provision in the building. So the needs of independent wheelchair users may be satisfied. You notice that I say independent wheelchair user. That means he can use the wheelchair to go everywhere he wants. And the regulation, including the regulation in China, just focus on this group. So this group can be easily satisfied. But the problem is, compared with the third, fourth, and the fifth row, the later, the 3 row, sometimes are much easier to ignore it. And finally, the 7th and 8th are different. They are disabled person. They cannot be independent. They need someone, maybe wife, maybe husband, to go with them. And this would be a kind of very special than normal vision. But for universal design, it could be admissible. So the rule is that where normal provision cannot cater for everyone, so special provision may be good, may be right. Okay, that's the concept, how to deal with the different demands and different groups in the framework of universal design. Okay, after that, until now, we have a glimpse into the history of disability and sports and the evolution of perceptions of disability and the strategies, and also the methodology of universal design. So let's take a look of some typical cases in improving accessibility environment in the preparation for the Paralympic Winter Games in the next year. That is action plan for universal accessibility improvement. the work, the target of the work has several key points. The first is to ensure that all participants will have a highly quality sports experience. And the second one, to promise to hold the game, we have to meet the IPC requirements and China's commitment to the accessible environment. Say, it's also a very precious Olympic legacy for the host city. And the third, all the stakeholders reach a consensus on the goal of universal accessibility environment and make efforts to complete it. And the fourth, based on the division of responsibilities and the consensus of accessible environment goals, including space scope, completion time, target level, and implementation subject, the Winter Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games action plan for accessibility environment improvement will be authorized, is now authorized. The last one is to promote the overall level of universal accessibility environment in the city. So I'm going to show you some concrete work. In the past few years, a detailed survey of accessibility has been carried out in some key areas in Beijing, including the road traffic, public toilets, service facilities, and awareness. So, and also a database of accessibility system has been established. This archive shows the database of different sidewalk or curb ramps, do you know? So maybe most of you have never used a wheelchair. You may not know even a few centimeters of a difference in height can make it very difficult for a wheelchair user to navigate. Do you know why? Because the wheelchair has 4 wheels. There are 2 small wheels in front, very small. So even a very, just a few centimeters could be a very high level for the small wheels to come. So that is to say, some of them is in compliance of the regulations, like this. And look, and no height, no gap. And this one, because the two balls, 2 stones, is too narrow, and wheelchair cannot pass. And the third one, there's no ramp, so you have to add a ramp. So in this way, we make a survey and to establish a kind of database. Furthermore, in order to, group, work photos, group photos, outdoors, and street, and interiors, and the neighborhoods, do a lot of work. And furthermore, in order to describe the barrier-free or accessible environment in different areas more scientifically, we use a kind of GIS tools to in a quantitative way, to evaluate the accessible environment in different blocks. This is different elements for the entrance, for the elevators, for the public toilets, and parking, ramp, and blind sidewalk, and we give them a score. They score in different blocks in the inner city. So in this way, we try to find identifying problems. That's what we should do. We have to solve. So in accordance with the international standards, we make the guidelines and action plan for the construction of accessibility standards. For example, this one is the action plan for universal accessibility improvement. And this one is accessibility guidelines for Beijing Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. It's a kind of illustrated handbook. And in this way, we do a lot of things. For example, for large-scale transportation hubs, air terminal, this is the Daxing International Air Terminal, accessible design and construction should be early involved in the construction process. So wait. Situational, noisy. In the construction process, which is a very systematic project, because accessible design it's not just one thing. It involves multiple links and nodes, such as from the design, construction, interior decoration, and the facilities and the products. So it requires the intervention and control throughout the whole process. So even after the opening of Daxing International Airport, this is a chairman, president of China Disabled Person Federation, Zhang Haidi, yeah, with members of accessibility experts, went to inspect the accessibility facilities once again. So it's of course, it's a very good air terminal for the accessibility environment. Look, and this is a low-level service deck. You know, people use wheelchair. They can use this low-level service desk for getting information. And yeah, it's a very complicated toilet. So this is a very typical, we call it the accessible toilet or universal toilet or the barrier-free toilet. It can fit all kinds of needs. For example, the seat for childish seat. And this one is a kind of equipment for cleaning, say, rectal cancer. Do you know the rectal cancer? It's a cancer in the rectal, and you have to create a new hole on your abdomen, on your belly. Yes, because of the cancer, you have to cut your rectal and make a new hole there. So you have to clean it with some devices, and this is the device for that. And the handrail designed for the people who can brace up and also pull up the body. And this one is a wall-hung urinal, because this is a wall-hung urinal is easier for wheelchair users. So everything is designed for different kind of demands. And another story is, I think most of you, when you check your luggage at the airport, you should meet the problem is the luggage is too heavy to put on the track. So most of the air terminals, they have the track like this. On the left, my left. Yeah, is it too heavy? How, for elderly, how to deal with it? So in a Daxing air terminal, they changed the design. It just designed as a ramp. So I think this solution solves the problem. It's a very low cost, and it's a very typical example of a universal design. You can just push your luggage on the ramp, and the ramp just move your luggage away. And another example is accessible tourism. Everyone knows our neighborhood. There's a very famous garden, say Yuanmingyuan, old summer palace next to us. So, and also this one is the most important cultural heritage in our country. So to realize the accessible environment in this garden, we should not only just consider the configuration of the facilities and the equipment, but also what? Consider the appearance of the cultural heritage. Yeah. Could you imagine we use the steel, very shining steel in such an old garden? So in this way, in one way, we have to improve accessibility of the environment. On the other way, we design the colors, the materials, and the forms of the various facilities and the equipment to better conform to the overall style of the cultural heritage. Yeah. And what's more, of course, there are many venues, both new and renovated. In particular, the renovation or the reconstruction of the old venues due to the very complicated existing problems needs to ensure to meet the latest accessible standards, international standards. So this requires the continuous follow-up of the construction process. So we still have 10 minutes? Okay. And many of these problems are very unique, so it must be addressed in a very specific way. So, for example, this way, and yeah, we go there a lot of times to solve these problems, and each one is different. Okay. Last 10 minutes, please allow me to introduce the Institute of Accessibility Development, because I'm really proud of it. It's a kind of a very important work or strategy, I think, in Tsinghua University, facing the disabled issues, facing the user demands. So the Institute of Accessibility Development was founded on April 23rd, 5 years ago, 2016. It's a kind of a university-level transdisciplinary research institution, and one of the core members of the center of the Tsinghua think tank. So it's also supported by China Disabled Persons Federation, and in conjunction with the related state ministries and commissions, such as Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development, Ministry of Civil Affairs. So our institute is targeted at promoting the development of universal accessibility for all. So it's based on the global vision, international standards, and Chinese characters. Connect well-known corporations and organizations and kind of world-class scholar and high-tech products. So there are three important works. One is consultations and the research on China's user needs, systematically research on living conditions and the basic needs of people with disabilities and the solutions of improving their social, economic, political, and cultural values. And the second is human settlement environment and the technology innovation to support, because we are cross-discipline, so we support and guide interdisciplinary research, including cross-innovation in architecture, planning, industrial design, mechanical manufacturing, internet, healthcare, and rehabilitation, including social science. And the last one is training and spreading, manage research resources connecting with the governments, the society and markets, and support excellent training and cultural spreading. I'll show you some examples. Just in 5 years, we are involved in some very important national major projects, including guidelines for accessible planning standards in Xiong'an. Everyone knows Xiong'an City in the new district. And also the Universal Accessibility Design Shouyu in Beijing Daxing International Airport. And we make a lot of publication. This is a series book of accessible strategies, including the campus, including the neighborhood, including the Olympic Games, something else. And also we very important, we issued a declaration, a Beijing Declaration on Universal Accessibility Development in 1918. It's a kind of on a very large international conference, and experts from all over the world, they sit here, we have a common sense and have the declaration to have the target to realize a kind of universal accessibility. And also we are involved in many regulations, guidelines, specification, and standards. That's just in 5 years time span. And also we do some practice, including in the aging society, aging in place, how to create a livable community or environment. This is a renovation project just in Yayuncun. This is not far away from here. And also we focus on historical area. You know, in Beijing historical area, many buildings are not inaccessible. And also they are very important to preserve, we say, the cultural heritage. So how to deal with us. So we gather together and do some research on that. And also, of course, this is a kind of a cross-discipline innovation. And this one is very important. It's a kind of graphical tactile display terminal for visually impaired. There are very small dots. They can change their location. So in this way, people can touch the screen and feel the different graphs or texts in this way. So, and other things, for example, this one is a kind of smartphone touch technology. For blind people, he can use their ear to control the phone. It's very convenient for them. And for example, then this one, exoskeleton. Do you know why exoskeleton is very expensive? Because of the battery. How to use it? So can we design a exoskeleton without battery. So this one is. It's a kind of automatic energy storage. They use the limb to store, to create power, to energy, and store it, and then to use it. And also we do a lot of training and workshops. This is a disability equality workshop cooperated with UNESCO. In this one, we try to break kind of a stereotype of how to realize the disabled conceptions. And also we cooperated with UN, WTO, it's a World Tourism Organization, and UNESCO, and different organizations and universities. And this, we organize all the college students together. And this is the three students are all from Tsinghua University. It's Zhu Xiaopeng, Wei Xiang. They're all wheelchair users. And in this accessibility forum under the Belt and the Road framework, they have a declaration to all to realize a kind of universal accessibility. And also our work is also extended to high schools. There's a high school student. They have a Universal Accessibility Development Alliance for youth. And also in the kindergartens, there's a Sunshine Angels for children to spread knowledge about disabilities. So this is a story talking about guiding dogs to them. So it's a do not, 不拒绝, guiding dogs. And okay, the last, let's come back for the Beijing Declaration on Universal Accessibility Development. We have a very important 4 issues. The target is universal accessibility, and the method is what we talked about, universal design. But the pattern, the model should be public engagement. Everyone is one part of this, this path or this target. And the last one, to be a kind of enforcement, is the teeth of law. You have to make laws, and the law has teeth. Yeah, in this way, everything can be enforced. So that's the key content, key issues in this declaration. So, okay, 1 hour. Thank you.